On November 13, 2022, a devastating explosion rocked Istiklal Avenue, one of the busiest spots in Istanbul. This area, known for its shops, restaurants, and constant flow of tourists and locals, was suddenly transformed into a scene of terror. The attack claimed the lives of 6 civilians and injured more than 80, shocking not only Turkey but the entire world. The Turkish government's response was swift and forceful. Shortly after the attack, Ankara blamed the Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as the PKK, and the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, which include Kurdish militias reportedly supported by the United States. In retaliation, Turkey launched a series of airstrikes targeting Kurdish positions in northern Syria and Iraq. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan also threatened a ground invasion, further escalating already high regional tensions. Domestically, Erdogan used the attack as a political lever. With the 2023 presidential elections approaching, he seized the moment to reinforce his image as a strong leader committed to national security. Nationalist rhetoric surged, bolstering public support for military actions and diverting attention from domestic criticisms, such as Turkey's economic crisis. For those unfamiliar, the Kurds are one of the largest ethnic groups in the world without a state of their own, with an estimated population of 30 to 45 million people. They inhabit a cultural region known as Kurdistan, which spans southeastern Turkey, northern Syria, northern Iraq, and western Iran. Despite sharing a unique language and cultural traditions, they remain fragmented across different nations. This lack of a homeland has been one of the primary sources of tension in the Middle East throughout the 20th century. Kurdish nationalist movements have often sought autonomy or independence, but their efforts have been thwarted by local governments and global geopolitical dynamics. In Turkey, in particular, Kurds have faced historical repression. Until 1991, the state did not even officially recognize them as a distinct people, and the Kurdish language was banned from public use for decades. Despite some legal relaxations, cultural and political discrimination persists to this day. Additionally, the armed conflict between the Turkish government and the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, has further strained this contentious relationship. Since 1984, the PKK has waged an insurgency against the Turkish state, resulting in over 40,000 deaths, most of them Kurdish civilians. Turkey's response has included frequent attacks on PKK bases in Iraq and Syria. The situation became even more complicated with the outbreak of the Syrian civil war in 2011. During the conflict, Syrian Kurds, led by Kurdish militias known as the YPG, emerged as one of the most effective forces in the fight against ISIS. However, the military and political gains made by the Kurds in Syria were seen by Turkey as a direct threat, fearing that Kurdish autonomy in Syria might inspire its own Kurdish minority to push for greater rights or even independence. This historical backdrop is key to understanding how the Kurds have become unwilling protagonists in cultural and geopolitical struggles that transcend their borders. Now, as Turkey ramps up its rhetoric against the PKK and Kurdish forces in Syria, the connection between recent events in the Middle East and Turkey's strategic interests is becoming increasingly evident. And Turkey's imminent invasion of Syria could be closer than ever. The Middle East is a constantly shifting region, where seemingly isolated events can trigger global repercussions, a topic we've explored in other documentaries on this channel. Recently, major events like the war in Ukraine have added new layers of complexity to an already volatile global situation. With Russia redirecting military and economic resources to the Ukrainian front, its ability to sustain Bashar al-Assad's terrorist regime in Syria has been significantly diminished, contributing to Assad's recent loss of power. This power vacuum has weakened Assad's position, which for years relied on Russian support to maintain control over parts of Syrian territory. At the same time, conflicts like Hamas attacks on Israel and the ongoing tensions between Israel and Iran have further destabilized the region. These clashes not only fuel historical rivalries but also undermine Assad's allies, such as Hezbollah, which faces growing economic and military challenges. The increasing fragility of the Syrian regime creates space for other regional actors and armed groups to expand their influence, sparking a power struggle in a country already devastated by civil war. The Syrian regime's weakening is clear. After more than a decade of conflict, Assad's military capabilities are depleted. The partial withdrawal of Russian support has worsened this situation, threatening even strategic bases like Mymimim and the Tartus port, both critical for Russia's Mediterranean presence. Meanwhile, Iran, another key Assad ally, is also struggling to fund its operations in the region due to economic sanctions and domestic instability. Amid this uncertainty, Turkey sees an opportunity. With Assad's regime under pressure and the Kurds consolidating their position in northern Syria, Erdogan has ramped up his rhetoric about creating a safe zone. This strategy, as we'll see, ties closely to both Turkey's national security concerns and Erdogan's domestic political ambitions. Turkey has long pursued an assertive policy toward northern Syria, but recent developments have increased the urgency of its actions. Since 2019, Erdogan has pushed for the establishment of a 30-kilometer deep safe zone along the Turkey-Syria border. Officially, the goal is to prevent attacks by Kurdish groups. However, the motivations behind this strategy go far beyond national security. The safe zone is also presented as a solution to the Syrian refugee crisis. Turkey currently hosts around 3.6 million refugees, a number that has become a central issue in domestic political debates. Erdogan has proposed resettling millions of these refugees in the safe zone, claiming it would ease the economic and social burden on Turkish cities, which are under significant strain. However, this plan may have a darker motive: demographic engineering. By resettling Arab populations in the zone, this move could dilute Kurdish presence in northern Syria, altering the region's ethnic composition. From a domestic political perspective, Erdogan's strategy is a critical tool for consolidating popular support. The government is leveraging military actions as a way to strengthen Erdogan's image as a strong leader while diverting attention from internal issues such as the economic crisis and rising inflation, which have significantly reduced purchasing power and fueled growing dissatisfaction among the Turkish population. Successful operations against Kurdish forces reinforce this narrative of strength and national security, helping Erdogan shore up his base ahead of political challenges. However, this strategy is not without significant risks. A military incursion into Syria could draw international condemnation, particularly from the United States, and the potential for a prolonged conflict threatens to exacerbate instability in an already fragile region. While Turkey positions itself as a key player in the evolving geopolitical landscape, other actors are also making strategic moves in northern Syria. Among them is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, a group that has gained significant prominence as Assad's regime continues to weaken. Emerging from a splinter of al-Qaeda in Syria, HTS has consolidated its position as one of the dominant forces in the region. The power vacuum left by Assad, coupled with the reduced involvement of foreign powers, has allowed HTS to expand its influence and strengthen its hold on strategic territories, particularly in Idlib province. The group's well-organized military structure and governance system in the areas it controls have helped it carve out a significant presence in the region. Despite its jihadist origins, HTS has been working to reshape its image, portraying itself as a viable alternative amidst the chaos of Syria's civil war. This rebranding effort aims to attract support or at least tolerance from regional actors who might see the group as a counterbalance to other forces, such as the Kurdish militias or remnants of Assad's regime. While officially designated as a terrorist organization by many nations, there are signs that some countries are approaching HTS's rise with pragmatism. Turkey, for instance, is walking a delicate line in its dealings with the group. On one hand, Ankara seeks to limit HTS's expansion to avoid international backlash. On the other, it may view the group as a potential tool to counter Kurdish influence and fill the void left by Assad's crumbling regime. The rise of HTS underscores the complexity of alliances in the Middle East, where groups like this often become strategic pawns in larger geopolitical games. Immediate security and power interests frequently take precedence over long-term moral or ethical considerations. With HTS gaining strength and expanding its regional connections, the future of Syria grows increasingly uncertain. However, the collapse of Assad's regime is not only benefiting HTS but also creating ripples that could reshape the dynamics of the entire Middle East, with consequences that extend far beyond Syria's borders. After 13 years of civil war, the rapid downfall of Assad's government surprised many, revealing the extreme exhaustion of his military forces and the fragility of a regime that had long relied on external allies for survival. Russia, one of Assad's key backers, emerges as one of the biggest losers in this scenario. Strategic locations like the Mimimim airbase and the Tartus port, essential for Russia's Mediterranean operations and influence in Africa, are now under threat. Although Moscow signed agreements before Assad's fall to retain its bases, widespread instability and the absence of political control make the future of Russia's presence in the region increasingly uncertain. This weakening of Russia's position is directly tied to its prioritization of the war in Ukraine, which has drained its resources and left Assad more vulnerable than ever. Iran, another key ally of the Assad regime, has also suffered a significant blow. Assad's downfall threatens to sever the logistical route connecting Tehran to Hezbollah in Lebanon, a vital channel for the flow of weapons and financial support. The hostility of Syria's new leaders toward Iran became evident quickly, with attacks targeting Iranian installations and representatives within the country. While Iran may attempt to adapt or forge new relationships, as it has done with the Taliban in Afghanistan, its influence in Syria is now severely diminished. Conversely, Turkey emerges as one of the biggest winners in this new landscape. With strong influence over Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Ankara has an opportunity to shape Syria's political future. Turkey's geographical proximity, its history of involvement in the conflict, and its strategic interests in curbing Kurdish forces give Erdogan a privileged position. However, the relationship between Turkey and HTS remains complex. Ankara must carefully balance supporting the group while maintaining control over its actions to avoid destabilizing confrontations. Israel also benefits, albeit cautiously. Assad's exit weakens Iran and Hezbollah, both declared enemies of Israel. However, uncertainty over who will control Syrian territory near the Golan Heights poses a serious concern. With HTS, ISIS, and other extremist factions gaining ground, Israel must remain vigilant to prevent this instability from escalating into a direct threat. The Kurdish forces face an extremely uncertain future. While they maintain control over areas in northern Syria, the fragmentation of the country could further limit their autonomy, especially as Turkey intensifies efforts to curtail their influence. Additionally, the chaos might enable ISIS to regroup, posing another significant risk to Kurdish-held territories. For the United States, the impact of Assad's fall is still being assessed. While some see it as an opportunity to withdraw American troops from Syria, the threat of regional instability, potentially affecting allies like Jordan and Israel, complicates this decision. Ultimately, Syria seems destined for even greater fragmentation. With territories divided among HTS, Kurdish forces, remnants of ISIS, and potentially new external influences, the country is heading into yet another phase of chaos and uncertainty. As always, the future of the Middle East remains deeply intertwined with developments in Syria, with every move reshaping the balance of power both in the region and globally. An important element of this discussion is the strained relationship between the United States and Turkey. This tension largely stems from U.S. support for the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF. While the U.S. views the SDF as an essential ally in the fight against ISIS, Turkey considers it an extension of the PKK and thus a direct threat to its national security. This divergence has created a strategic impasse within NATO, with Turkey frequently leveraging its position in the alliance to pressure Washington and European allies. Meanwhile, the reduced influence of Russia in Syria and Iran's challenges have created opportunities for other regional players to step in. Arab countries such as the UAE and Saudi Arabia are exploring ways to fill the void left by the weakened Syrian regime, including diplomatic initiatives and strengthening alliances with rebel groups that align with their strategic interests. Turkey is using Syria's instability to expand its regional influence. Ankara sees an opportunity to reshape northern Syria to serve its interests, particularly by countering Kurdish forces and establishing the long-discussed safe zone. However, this approach places Turkey in a delicate position, balancing short-term goals with the risks of direct confrontations with global powers. In this complex geopolitical game, the struggles over control of Syrian territory are just one piece of a larger puzzle. While the US and Turkey grapple with tensions, Russia seeks to maintain its Mediterranean assets, and Iran fights to preserve its influence, Syria's fate remains uncertain. With so many overlapping interests, the Middle East is heading toward increasingly fierce competition. What will ultimately shape the region's future is the ability or inability of the involved actors to strike a balance between their conflicting ambitions. The undeniable truth is that the future of Syria and the Middle East is shrouded in uncertainty, with multiple potential scenarios emerging from the current dynamics. Most likely, the region will continue to serve as a battleground for regional and global powers, each striving to consolidate its position amidst the collapse of the Syrian regime and the country's fragmentation. On one hand, Syria could become the stage for a new civil war. With the fall of Bashar al-Assad's government, various armed groups such as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and Kurdish factions could vie for control of strategic territories. The proliferation of local and regional actors might lead to further fragmentation, making the establishment of a stable central government nearly impossible. Another possibility involves the strengthening of regional powers like Turkey and the Arab states. Turkey could push forward with its operations in northern Syria, solidifying its safe zone and redefining spheres of influence within Syrian territory. At the same time, countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE may expand their diplomatic and economic efforts to shape a new balance of power that weakens rivals such as Iran and Russia. For the Kurds, the future remains equally uncertain. They remain a central point of tension in the region. Kurdish autonomy in northern Syria faces challenges from both Turkey and other local groups, while their relationship with the United States is tested by Ankara's pressure on Washington. Nevertheless, the Kurds continue to seek international recognition and support to secure their survival amid numerous adversaries. Finally, there's the global impact of this crisis. The competition between the United States, Russia, Turkey, and Iran in Syria reflects broader struggles for influence in an increasingly multipolar world. The ability of these powers to achieve a balance that avoids complete chaos will be crucial in determining Syria's fate and, in many ways, the future of the long-sought stability in the Middle East. If you enjoyed this mini-documentary by GlobalFlow, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, check out the next documentary playing on the screen. See you there. Take care.